Veteran Services of Carolinas works with veterans across the state of North Carolina. Now, the rest of ABCCM is Buncombe County specific. Veteran Services of Carolinas covers all of North Carolina in one form or another. So we do housing assistance, we do which is rental assistance for someone who is unsheltered to get them into a home, or if they're getting ready to lose their residence, will help. We have an employment program. We have a call center that takes about 3,000 calls a month for veterans and their families across the state. We have we have a street outreach team that goes across the state into the uninhabitable places and looks for homeless veterans and civilians. And we run a backpack program that I partner with area churches in to provide backpacks to homeless individuals that consist of a tarp, a sleeping bag, things like that. And that establishes goodwill. Our grants don't buy that, so our churches do. Hygiene kits, things like that. It establishes goodwill and trust, and then our peer supports and our street outreach team can go back and engage with them later. And often they remember, oh, you're the one who gave me the backpack. And now there's a little bit of trust, and now they can build from that. So our backpack program is something that I spearhead and love. And then we have a suicide prevention grant called the Staff Sergeant Fox Grant. And that is where you heard about our mental health classes. So I'll talk a little bit about that. We cover the state trying to prevent veteran suicide. And so we have people who are sort of first responders in that situation. That's their role, is to talk to veterans to keep them from taking their lives. But in doing so, what we have learned is that if we can do community trainings, if we can do trainings with churches, if we can do trainings with community engagements, things like that, then it helps you as a person who maybe encounters a homeless veteran outside who is maybe having some suicidal thoughts. It equips you to know what to do should you encounter that. Or should someone in your everyday life start throwing out some concerning conversations or some concerning things of what to do. So we offer 2 big trainings in that area. We offer one, which is called QPR, stands for Question, Persuade, Refer. And that is a 2-hour training purely on what to do if someone is suicidal. How to ask the question about if they're thinking about taking their life, how to refer them to the right places to get help, and how to persuade them to stay alive. QPR. It is a 2-hour training that we provide for free. Our grant dollars allow us, and over the last 3 years, I've trained almost 2,000 people in either that or other course. But that is a 2-hour course. I'll come to you. And then we have another one called Mental Health First Aid. Mental Health First Aid is a 7-hour course. It's a much longer one. And that is on what to do if someone is having a mental health challenge or a mental health crisis. So I have a couple of figures I want to get out of my bag. Give me just a second.
I'm proud to say that this church has a long, good history of working with ABCCM in different ways. We're on the schedule at the Veterans Quarters every quarter to make and serve lunch, and it's always delicious. And a number of our good folks volunteer at the Samaritan North location.
Love it.
Like sorting clothes and whatnot.
With Miss Cheryl out there.
Oh, I started to say, I'll do that for you later if you don't.
Okay, yeah, I'll be glad to have
Just
you.
whenever you're done,
Sure,
I'll
yeah,
handle them out.
thank you.
Sir, if I could also mention it.
That's
I'll
right.
handle them out for you.
Brian's really good at passing things out to everybody.
Love it, yeah, I will be glad to have you do that. All right, so when you think about mental health and why that matters, 1 in 5 adults experience a mental illness in the United States in any given year. 1 in 5. In the US, 1 in 20 adults have a serious mental illness, such as schizophrenia or bipolar. Half of all mental health disorders begin before age 14, and 3/4 before the age of 24. Many people don't seek help due to stigma, due to cost, due to lack of resources. My husband is a combat veteran. He did 2 tours of Iraq. He's a Bronze Star recipient. And in our household, he's also a pastor. He pastors a Methodist, United Methodist Church in Haywood County and one in Buncombe County. He has battled post-traumatic stress disorder for many years. Many years. His first deployment was 2003. I was so ill-equipped to handle what a combat veteran was going to go through. We got married at 18, and very young. I had been 18 for 16 days when we got married. Very young. And he was 19. He was stationed at Fort Bragg. We moved to Bragg, and lived there. He went into the reserves. We came home. We started a family. We have 2 children, and then 9/11 happened. And on the evening of 9/11, my husband came back to me and he said, "This matters to me, and I want to go back into the service." And I said, "Okay, but we're home. My mother is next door. Your mother's down the road. We have 2 small children. Can we agree to the reserves?" We agreed with that. And he was gone in January so 9/11 was 2001. He was gone in January of 2003. Our daughter was 3. Our son was 6. And he deployed that first deployment to Mosul. It was a very hard deployment. He was gone for 15 months. And it was just tough. There's no other word for it. He came back from that, and I did not recognize the man that was now in my house. Our children didn't really even know him anymore either. And so we had to reconnect, right? We had to start rebuilding our marriage. And that was hard to do because I didn't understand PTSD. The Army doesn't equip spouses with these things. They don't really equip their soldiers with these things either, but the spouses really don't get it at the time. They're doing a lot better now. And so over the next 4 years, I learned a lot about living with a combat veteran with PTSD. Our children learned a lot. He deployed again in 2008, 2009. He was gone that time for 13 months. That time he was in Baghdad. At that point, it was during that deployment, he received his Bronze Star and for valor. And then he came home, and I was like, oh yay, we made it through another one. And what I learned was that the things that the PTSD and the depression and all of those things that were happening over here, they didn't go away in that 4 years. And then he deployed again, and it actually got worse. And so he came back from that deployment, and he had walked away from his faith during that time. He was not in church, and it was just really hard. And so after that deployment, the second one, he came back to his faith, and I was like, oh good, we've made it. And then about 3 years after that deployment, he was in Montgomery, Alabama with the Army, and he decided to take his life. Now, he didn't, but he made that decision and took his service weapon and put it in his mouth. And he sat there for many moments before he determined that this was not the way he was going to go out. And he came home from that weekend and sat down and we talked, and we realized that we really needed to focus in on his mental health. He was 1 in 5 at that moment, and we had kind of just been throwing medication at it. And so what began then was really an intentional time of looking at what does PTSD look like? What can I do? In 2019 is when I joined ABCCM. And I did not even know classes like mental health first aid or suicide prevention classes were a thing. I'd never heard of them. I grew up in church, I've been in church all my life. I had never heard that these statistics were troubling. I had never heard that there were things we could do to learn when someone was feeling suicidal, even if they weren't saying anything. So once I learned, I quickly said, hey, can I become a trainer in that? Because I have a vested interest in this. I've got skin in the game, as they say. And so at the time, my managing director, who is now ABCCM's COO, Brandon Wilson, said, yeah, I'll pay for you to be a trainer, but by gosh, you're gonna make use of it, because it's $2,500 for you to become a mental health first aid trainer, and it's $700 as a suicide prevention trainer. And I said, okay. And I've upheld my end. But along the way, I learned a lot of things that I never knew. Like 50,000 people die every year by suicide in the United States. It's 1 death every 11 minutes. I've been talking 20 minutes, which means somewhere in the United States, one person just took their life and another one is getting ready to. I learned that 13 million people think about suicide in any given year. And I learned that 1.6 million people attempt it. I learned in an average high school classroom, 1 male and 2 females have probably thought about taking their life, or maybe even have attempted to do so. I learned that veterans are fully susceptible to all of these things. You want to pass these out to me? One of each to everybody. Thank you so much. And I learned that these trainings help people to recognize signs and symptoms of someone who's having a mental health challenge, or of someone who's having suicidal thoughts. I learned that it's everybody's responsibility to help where they can and to provide hope where they can. And so this has become something that is a passion project for, I don't like to use that term, but it's become something that is very near and dear to me, obviously. The statistics speak for themselves. They're not getting better. They're just not getting better. And as we see a rise in homelessness, as we see a rise in everything, these things actually get worse. I live in Canton, in Haywood County. Many of you know we lost the paper mill a couple of years ago. the fallout from that was huge. And we don't have a lot of resources in Haywood County. So it's become really important for me to teach these trainings everywhere that I can, so people know what to do. Because a lot of people just don't know what to do. So that's the big picture for me. And then for me, and this is just for me, but my faith tells me that this matters. That being hands and feet here matter. And if I can learn, or if I can teach you guys how to save a life, or how to spot when someone's thinking about taking their life, that's just being a good neighbor here. Tell you a couple of quick stories about these trainings and the impact that they have made. I taught this training at New Covenant Church in Clyde last summer to their leaders, to their leadership team, youth leaders, pastoral leaders. And it was a hot day in August, as most of them were this past summer. And we did QPR, so I was there about 2 hours. They asked a ton of questions. They asked questions I didn't even know answers to. We learned a ton of things. And then it was about the first week of December. I was actually back at New Covenant doing a packing event. They bought and purchased supplies to pack 100 backpacks for my homeless veterans. And so one of the youth leaders came up to me and he said, "Hey, Miss Keri, can I tell you something?" And I said, "Sure, as long as it's something good." And he said, "Well, I want to tell you that we took your class back in August," and he said, "The next day, my wife and I were walking Lake Junaluska." He said, "And we both got texts from the same person." Thank you. And the text said, "Hey, I just want you two to know I love you." And he said, on its own, we were like, "Oh, that's really sweet that she thought of both of us at the same time." He said, and then your training kicked in, and we were both like, "Is this a red flag? Is this something we need to check on?" So they tried to call her, and she didn't answer. So they felt like something was wrong. So because of the training, they left, they went to her house, and she was actively trying to take her life. They were able to get her help. They were able to get mobile crisis to her. They were able to get her into long-term therapy, and she's still alive. And she's not suicidal again. So because they had just gone through it, they had the knowledge and the understanding of, this is a sign that Keri told us to be looking for. So that's where these trainings are really, to me, they're vital. And it's the things that people don't say. When my husband walked out of our house that morning going to Montgomery, we had been fighting pretty bad. I'm a redhead through and through. This used to be a lot redder than it is now. Age is taking its toll on me, but I still have the redheaded temper, and I've raised redheaded children, so I'm versed in it. But as he was leaving, he turned around and he said, "I think you and the kids would just be better off without me." And what I said back was, "You don't get to get out of this marriage that easy. We made vows." And what he thought was, well, okay, I'll just kill myself. And so what I've learned is that term is one that somebody will say when they're trying to tell you they're thinking about taking their life, but they don't want to verbally say it out loud, is, "I think you would just be better off without me." So had I had this training back in 2012, I would have known better. I hope I would have known better. But I am a huge there are other trainings. These are the two that I'm trained in. I find them to be super beneficial. I find them to be super helpful. I find them to be really vital right now. And I highly encourage you as a church, as a team, to look at these and see if you think this is something that feels right for you. And if you would like to go through them, and if so, then I will come back and we'll hang out for a little while together. Anybody have I've talked for 30 minutes now, so anybody have any questions or comments or anything that I can answer or speak to? Yes, sir.
Things. You mentioned your husband's a pastor now.
Mhm.
Tell us a little bit about that journey to become a pastor. What are you doing? And the second question is, I would be interested in taking the training, if we could do that, wherever.
Sure.
But you really sparked an interest, but if you don't mind sharing about your husband?
Sure. So, not too long after our son was born, I was 20 years old, almost 21 when our son was born. He was 21. When I tell you that we were too stupid to be married, have children, anything, we really were. I say all the time that our son Austin and I, we raised each other. But when we baptized him that a couple of months after he was born, I grew up in church, like I said. I actually grew up in the Haywood County Church, the Canton Church that my husband pastors at now. That never happens in the Methodist world, but it happened to us. But that same church, when we took our son up for baptism, we did the things, and my husband knelt down at the altar with Austin, and he was praying, and we got back to our seat, and he said, I think I'm being called to preach. Now, mind you, he was 21 years old. And I said, really? Because it came out of left field. We'd never had, he was still in the army. We never had this conversation at all. And so I was like, well, okay, I don't know what to do next. We have this newborn, like, does that, and so he said, well, I just feel it. It's like, oh, okay. So fast forward about 6 months, and we started having our first spat of marital things, and he stepped away from that call. Then 9/11 happened, everything happened. And then when he came back from his second deployment, he had to be tested for esophageal cancer, because they've been blowing up weapons caches, and he had ingested a lot of things down his throat, so he had to be checked for esophageal cancer. And he didn't tell anyone. It was just part of a routine checkup that they were doing at medical when they discovered it. He didn't tell me, so he started going for a scan and all these things. And during that time, he said very clearly that he was in the living room one day and God said, hey, do you remember that you made a promise to me? So how about we revisit that? And so my husband is nothing if not humorous. And so he said, yeah, what else you got? Maybe not. So we started in at that time, at the time the youth pastors at our church had stepped out, we stepped in. And so we were going back and forth with being youth pastors. Our children were youth at the time. And then I came home from a meeting one night at church, and he was in the living room, and I was frustrated. You know, you've all been to those meetings, church council meetings, and when you leave, you're like, well, that was me that night. And I went into the house, and he was sitting at the table, and I just very flippantly said, oh, goodness, maybe we should just start our own church. And he said, careful, because I need to talk to you. And he said, God is really nudging me into the pulpit. And I said, what else you got? And so we took it to a group of trusted friends and said, hey, can you pray for this? We were a little bit like Gideon. I'm going to put this out, and we'll see what happens in the morning. So we did that, and all of those people said, we're praying, but yes, you have a call on your life. We did another Gideon where we put it out again, and then just out of the blue one day, a friend of his came to him and said, hey, I think that you're being called to preach. And my husband is tattooed and bearded and bald, and he looks like a typical soldier would look, you know. And he was like, are you sure, God, that you want me? Because I am who I am. And God said, I called you as you are. And so he started, and doors just started opening. And he's been a pastor now. He's going on his 11th year at the same two churches, which is also rare in the United Methodist, although we're getting better at that. But that's how. It was a lot of prayer. It was a lot of running away. And he tells people he was right at 40 in his second, going on 40 in his second deployment. Maybe not quite. But he tells people all the time, I wandered the desert for 40 years. Literally wandered the desert. And God called me out of it. And so he often comes to the trainings with me because he's still very much a soldier in a lot of ways. He's very much a great man of faith. But we tell our story, and we use our story in our trainings a lot. And he comes with me to them a lot, just to kind of give a little perspective on as someone who has had those feelings. But yeah, it was a whole lot of running, and then a whole lot of God said, don't run anymore.
That's a great story, though. That's a great message he has. And thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. And then somewhere along the way, I became a chaplain. And I just graduated last month with my MDiv, my Master's of Divinity in Pastoral Care and Chaplaincy. And my boss said, are you going to preach? And I said, no. That's his role. Mine is very different. But we partner in ministry a lot. We're empty nesters. Our son lives in Maryland. Our daughter she has her own home down the hill from us. She's a firefighter. Our son's a therapist. We've raised these really remarkable children who have walked through this whole journey with us, and you see it play out in the choices and the decisions they made for themselves in their lives. One runs toward danger like her father, and one wants to help people on the backside like his mother. So that's who we are as a family.
If we wanted to do training here, what do we need to do? Just schedule it with you and through Stuart?
Yep, absolutely.
And, I would expect a lot of people want to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The suicide prevention training is the one I recommend first, because it's the 2-hour training, and it's not quite as in-depth as the mental health first aid one. You do have to, with the mental health first aid, you have to have a minimum of 5 and a maximum of no more than 30. But with the QPR, there are I like to have at least 10 come, just because it is, it's a good training. But I would come here, we could have it right here in this room, as long as I have access to put up slides, with my computer. And, yeah, absolutely, we can do that. I am free after, I've got some trainings coming up that I'm traveling for because I cover the state. I'm also now in the church engagement team for ABCCM, so I cover the state. But after the middle of February, my calendar's pretty open right now.
That sounds like a great community outreach or inreach, whatever you wanna call it, that we could be the sponsor.
Absolutely.
And open it up to the greater Weaverville area.
Absolutely.
And what comes to mind is our church neighbors, Presbyterian and Methodist.
Maybe even teachers at school. Do you know if the, if school teachers have this training as part of their preparation?
So to my knowledge, no.
Okay.
And I will say that I have tried a couple of different routes to get into Buncombe County and Haywood County schools, and I've not been able to make any inroads. So if you know somebody that could help me with that, I would love to know that, because I think it's vital for all of our my mother was a teacher. She sat through this training, well, she's retired now, but she sat through this training last year after Helene. And she said, I wish I had known so much of that when I was teaching. Yes, ma'am?
I taught high school for 31 years, and I can see where this would be invaluable for anybody who's teaching children that are going through the traumas that they have to go through with parents sometimes, and with COVID, and with, those are things that we need to know. So Brad, to your thing, I think we should, maybe push this out to the schools, to the teachers, and, it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, it is, and it's free. That's the biggest thing is, the mental health first aid training, that's the longer one. If you pay for that through somebody else, it's about $200 a person. And I give it to you for free. I'll ask if you feed me lunch, because we're together for 7 hours. That's it. But the suicide prevention training really is the one I recommend first, and then we can go into the deeper one later. It's in Haywood County last year, we lost 3 youth, I think, like back to back, who took their own lives. And that's what the youth leaders at New Covenant said, our teachers don't know what to do. So the hospitals, nurses, I can think of that this needs to be everywhere. And this, for me, I feel like it's vital to go into our churches with this, because it's another way to love. It's another way to show love. And so, yeah, absolutely. Put it together. I'll come and train whoever. We can do multiple nights if we need to. I'm open for it, and I'll love to train it, really.
I'm interested in, how did your children, when they were going through puberty and those teenage years, how did they react to what their dad was going through?
So, at first they didn't quite know how to react, right? If I didn't know what to do, they darn sure didn't. But along the way, I credit the Army chaplain that was in my husband's unit with a lot of what happened next. But the Army chaplain and his wife held a retreat for soldiers who had been deployed. It was called a Yellow Ribbon Reintegration Retreat. And we went to that, and they taught us all these skills and all these communication things that we had never heard before. And we went home after that retreat, got our children back from my mother-in-law, and we all sat down at the kitchen table. And my husband said, okay, I need you guys to be totally honest with me about how you feel, about what you think, about what I've been through, what you have been through, what your mother has been through. We called it amnesty night. And it was just throw it all out there. No repercussions. Everybody takes a turn. Nobody's going to get grounded if you say that you're really mad at me because you don't know what my moods are going to be like. But we got to talk about it. And that came out of that retreat with the chaplains. And so at first the children are like, we're fine, we're fine. And then once my husband was like, yeah, I know you're lying. I know you're lying, so let's start this again. And then they were like, we don't know how to react sometimes because you always look mad. And that's just his face. He's like, I'm a soldier. I'm trained to, that's just my face. But so it really opened up a dialogue about his mental health and about how we could help him with that in the limited amount that we knew then. And then as we learned more, we shared more. And then my daughter has been through all of the trainings. My son is a licensed clinical social worker, so that's what he does for a living. And so now there are times where my husband will say something about something in therapy, and then they can have a conversation about that. So it really shaped and informed our children in ways that I would never have seen coming. But they were very much at first very scared to talk about it. And we had to make it okay for them to have that conversation.
Your husband's story reminds me of I have a nephew, my brother's son, that's just about that age, went through several tours in Iraq, was in the Marines, and like you said, came back a different person, and I don't know a lot about it today. He's stable and has a couple wonderful boys. But there was some times where he was lost, and then to add to that, he has been back with I don't even know what kind of detail, undercover, not directly military, like kind of as agent. I don't know, and I'm sure he has seen things and done things that would.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is why, if you learn things, like in the training, if he doesn't have a good support system or he doesn't have a good mental health support system, then as someone who stands in the gap for that, there are things you can learn that, there's certain things like behavioral clues that a person can do that they never say anything, but maybe they have a beloved pet and now all of a sudden they're asking you to take care of the pet. Maybe they have a prized possession that came down from their great-grandfather and now they're asking you if you want to take it. That's a clue, that's a sign that they're thinking about what's going to happen to my stuff when I'm no longer here. So, this training won't make you a therapist at all. My son would be really mad if after 2 hours with me, all of you had the same 2 degrees as he did. But it will, actually he has 3 degrees, but it will help you realize and understand what's happening to get them to the help that they need.
I think that would be the importance of that training, that maybe we could recognize a sign and then engage the people that we need to help an individual in that situation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Any other questions?
I just have a comment, which is that I really appreciate your testimony and sharing tonight, because it reminds me of the beautiful grace of God that can redeem war and the devastation of that into good. And like thinking about your daughter and your own work, her work as a firewoman and your son's work as a therapist. I mean, that is the redemptive work of a God who loves us.
Absolutely.
In the face of war, which I'm sure God does not love, but.
Absolutely. My husband is even right now, he goes tomorrow night to start a therapy called moral injury. And it's what a combat veteran is asked to do in combat that is something that they would never do ethically or morally in their civilian life, especially for someone who is now a pastor, to reconcile who he was in uniform into who he is now. And so the VA is starting to recognize moral injury treatment as something that veterans need. So he's stepping into that tomorrow night. So can't wait to see how that turns out.
Keri, there was something you said earlier that I'd like to hear some more of. You were talking about the importance of the training, and you said, "My faith tells me this matters." Can you say a little more about that and
Sure.
how your faith informs you and tells you it matters?
Sure. I have to say that the trainings during the trainings, I have to keep it very neutral, right. But because we're not in the training, I can tell you that I believe deeply that we are here to just see one another. I believe that is my role, is to see others. I firmly believe that God put us to be in connection and communication with one another, and to be, we're not called to be, we're 2 or 3 are gathered, right? We're called to be in connection. And the fact of the matter is that people we're connected with, some of them are going through things we don't see, we don't know, and in some cases we can't fathom. And so if I, as a trainer of these things, can help other people to see someone else who is hurting and to help them, that's what my faith tells me to do. Is that even if I never say to you, Jesus loves you, God loves you, and you are so important, but I say to you, your mental health matters, and I see you, and I have hope for you. That's my way of doing that, right? And loving them in a way that Jesus has called me to love. And so my faith tells me that I have the skills and the knowledge to pass along to other people to help another one of God's children. That's what my faith tells me. So, yeah.
Are there any tips or suggestions that you might give a church before there is a mental health crisis? Just kind of in normal times, a good mindset or a good approach, or ways to prep, ways to be, things to think about, so that we can maybe see things more readily, see people more deeply, or prevent mental health crises from rising?
Sure. I always encourage people to know their resources. Psychologytoday.com is a big resource for therapists who are in the area, if they take insurance, things like that. I think that if you know someone's personal life, right, you know their situation, and you start to notice things, they're not here when they usually have been, or they're at everything when they've been at nothing. That's a clue that there might be something going on at home. And maybe we should ask, hey, I've just noticed a couple of things about you, and I'm concerned, and I wanted to ask if you were okay, if you'd like to talk about it. 9 times out of 10, people will tell you first, oh, I'm fine. Every Sunday, my husband hears, well, so-and-so went to the hospital, and he says, I talked to you last week, and you told me you were fine, right? We lie to each other all the time, fine, blessed, good, And so I think it's intentionally talking to people and saying, okay, you say you're fine, but your daughter posted on Facebook that you were getting ready to go have blah, 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 so what's going on? Do you want to sit down and talk about it? Checking in on each other, even if you think there's nothing wrong. Don't underestimate the value of what I call kneecap to kneecap connection. Going to breakfast with somebody, just because. Going to sit beside them and actually have a conversation. We all everybody I work with is so caught up in these things. We live and breathe with them now. But you miss it, because if you're face to face with somebody and you can tell, okay, there's something going on here that they're not telling me. Just intentional connection is really important. Sending a card, sending a phone call, making a phone call, and start to notice if they're missing where they're usually absent or present. If they've got a life, maybe they've been given a diagnosis of something. These are all the things that, you can't fix them, but you can mitigate them by giving them someone to talk to in a safe space.
That's perfect. Thank you.
We appreciate so much you coming tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Making all the effort to be here.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. I think you learned about us from the Faith 360 gathering, which is one of their newest ministries. They live beside me in my office, and that's disaster recovery. And I think that's what we've learned is coming out of Helene, the mental health impacts of Helene, especially in this area, have really been heightened. And so we're trying to be very purposeful in pushing these trainings out right now through our churches. So, and also our backpack program. If you ever think you want to pack some backpacks for some veterans, let me know. Yes, ma'am.
We have a program here that, we started during Helene where we have packed lots of, they're not backpacks, but we have put lots of things in, and the girls, we keep them in our cars.
Like homeless
And if you
kids.
see someone on the street, you just hand it out to them, and we've done the women's things in pink, and the guys in a different color, whatever we have,
Sure, absolutely.
because we have toothbrushes, toothpaste, soap, and I can't remember what else, I can just remember packing them.
Yeah. A bag like that goes into our backpacks, so that we call that a hygiene kit.
Oh,
And so that goes into the backpacks, and then we add in a sleeping bag, a tarp, a pair of socks, a pair of gloves, a pair of
we have that in our
Yeah.
packs too.
Yeah. Handwritten letters go a long way.
What's the approximate cost for a
It-
bag?
It depends on what you want to put in it. They can go anywhere from $35 a bag on up to $60. We buy bulk out of Amazon, or sleeping bags a lot. That's the biggest expense, is the sleeping bags. What I have done in many churches now is go in, we pack the backpacks, we do the training, and then we pray over the backpacks, and somebody from my peer support team takes them out and they distribute them throughout the county.
Our minister prays over the children's backpacks at the beginning of every school year, which
Yeah.
I think is wonderful.
I love it. I love it.
There are just so many, and all kind of opportunities
Mm-hmm.
to help people, to minister to people. Backpacks, that's a wonderful way of doing that.
It is.
And among other things
Yeah.
that sometimes we don't think about, but they're out there, we can help.
For an unsheltered individual who, for whatever reason, be it mental health, be it substance use, whatever reason, that someone is living outside, when our team makes a connection, then the backpack is given to them at that time. And we've had several churches in the area call me and say, hey, we've got a homeless person on our steps. What can we do? And one of my team, we had just had this happen last week. One of my team went from the homeless outreach team. They talked to them and they got him into a halfway house yesterday. So, but they gave him a backpack first and said, until you are ready to make the commitment to do something, here's something that helps you stay outside a little better and a little warmer. And then normally when a church packs a bag, we ask them to put, or we have them put like their church information into them so they know where the bag came from. And then then they know this church cared enough to give me something. And it establishes a rapport and it starts to build trust. We give out about 700 to 800 backpacks a year across the state. And we try not to give a person a backpack, like 2, 3, 4 weeks in a row. Try to be good stewards of them. So that, if a person gets a backpack from us, they don't get another one for a while. But it's, you never want to underestimate the power of that connection.
Yeah. What that is, we're the conduit, that's God reaching his arm out.
Absolutely.
Our Lord reaching his arm out and saying, I care about you.
Yeah.
And that's where it starts.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Well, thank you so much for speaking with us tonight, Keri.
Absolutely.
We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. My email address is on the forms that we passed out. So if you want to get together and figure something out, then let me know. And if you have any questions or comments, you're welcome to email me. Thank you all for listening and calling.